From fake tracheas to wandering wombs, today's list covers a bunch of things we only hope never happen to us. Welcome back, most amazing fam. I'm your host Rachel Fisher, and join me as we count down our top 10 list of messed up treatments doctors lied about. Let's get going. Number 10. Hysteria. I've been waiting a long time to talk about this. Okay, so technically the treatment ended up being a good thing, but it was more the condition they lied about. As a hint to where this is going, hysteria comes from the Greek word hystera, which means uterus. By the end of the 19th century, 75% of women in America were diagnosed with hysteria. It was a term to describe a condition where an excess of emotion led to an out-of-control behavior. Symptoms included shortness of breath, anxiety, forwardness, irritability, agitation, insomnia, and even sometimes hallucinations. So, in other words, a very, very bad mood. One of the treatments used to remedy this were pelvic massages to achieve a hysterical paroxysm in order to stabilize and de-stress the patient. In today's terms, we call that an orgasm, which was something hysterical women didn't get a lot of, or women around that time in general. Pelvic massages have been performed as early as ancient Greece to cure the wandering womb, a fictitious condition where women's wombs were autonomous and would wander into their shoulder, for example, making it sore. The treatment was so popular, doctors finally thought it was time to invent a device who could do it for them. So they invented a device that vibrated in a particularly efficient way to achieve the result. The device remains very popular today, but the term hysteria has been debunked as an umbrella term to describe a multitude of actual disorders and conditions. Number 9. The placebo effect. The mind is a powerful thing. It can tell you something is really wrong, or it can lie to you, which is one of the reasons why doctors sometimes prescribe placebos. They take advantage of the power of suggestion. In a study for the journal PLOS One, out of 783 doctors, of which 71% were registered with the UK's General Medicine Council, 97% said that they had used substances or methods that lacked therapeutic value, aka they prescribed placebos. Only a tenth said that they were actually upfront about it, but half said that the therapy helped many other patients. Some placebos included vitamin C for cancer, saline injections, and sugar pills. The effectiveness of placebos, if it is a psychological issue, only works as well as the patient believes it will. But bottom line, prescribing something that you know has actually no value is unethical. One of the worst cases actually happened recently. An anti-vax German nurse gave over 8,000 people saline instead of the vaccine to give them a false sense of immunity because they just didn't believe in it. Number 8. Fen-Phen. Everybody wants a quick fix, but they are rarely ever real. The first diet pill hit the market in the late 1800s, and today the weight loss industry is valued at over $60 billion, with a large portion of that being mainly diet pills. The only two known appetite suppressants were fenfluramine and phentermine, but they didn't prove to be largely effective. However, one Dr. Michael Van Traub decided to combine them and make a new miracle weight loss drug in the 1970s called Fen-Phen. At first it appeared to work wonders. A single study of 120 patients over 4 years, terrible study size, just saying, saw the majority of female patients lose an average of 30 pounds. There were apparently no side effects, but no one was actually studying their hearts. It was introduced in 1992 and it swept the nation. After a rough debate, the FDA approved it, but in 1996, things went bad. Almost like perfect timing. 24 women taking the pills developed serious heart problems, and soon hundreds more were reported. Because of this severe oversight, the American Home and Products Corporation, inventors of Fen-Phen, had to pay $3.75 billion settlement. 50,000 more settlement cases were filed. So much for a quick fix, eh? Number 7. Radium. I learned about this recently through a series of lists and I still can't believe it. Radium is a radioactive substance that we know now can cause a series of life-threatening complications after repeated exposure. But in the late 19th and early 20th century, this stuff was used for everything. From skincare to toothpaste and water, this stuff was put in everything. From as early as 1896, the effects radium had against cancer were noticed, but soon it became a cure-all for most things like diabetes, rheumatism, and even impotence. As a result, a massive radium industry in the 1920s boomed, and soon you could find it on every shelf in the pharmacy. It was even recommended to drink a glass of water with radium in it because it was good for your health. But then people started to notice some pretty serious side effects such as, I don't know, organs failing, muscle and bone deterioration. You know, all the things radioactive exposure does to a person. The period lasted for 25 years, but by the time World War II hit, the product was considered dangerous. Can I say doctors lied about it if they didn't really know the full effects of the material? Not quite, but at the same time, prescribing something they didn't quite understand doesn't sound very truthful, does it? Number 6, the Starvation Doctor. Got a cold? Starve yourself. Got depression? Starve yourself. Got cancer? Yeah, don't eat food. Sounds ridiculous, right? Good. Because it is. But to Linda Burfield Hazard, it was the most sensible treatment one could do. Once she gained her medical license through a loophole, Linda preached that strict fasting was the only cure for disease. In her novels Fasting for the Cure of Disease and Scientific Fasting, the Ancient and Modern Key to Health, she spread her pseudo-scientific message wherever anyone would listen. She believed that all illnesses were a result of excess eating and that you had to starve yourself for months to stave off disease. Crazy. So she created her own sanitarium where she would only allow patients to drink tomato juice, asparagus juice, and sometimes a teaspoon of orange juice. Ridiculous. Once patients were in her care, if they tried to leave, she would have them declared insane. After 40 patients died, she was finally convicted of manslaughter in 1912 and was sentenced to hard labor. But for some reason, she was pardoned after 2 years. Then she moved to New Zealand and tried to practice there, but her license was revoked because of lack of credentials. Moral of the story, if someone tells you to starve yourself, make them watch you eat a burrito and smile. Number 5, lobotomies. Of course this was going to be on the list. The miracle procedure invented by Walter Freeman. Finally there was a way to alleviate the pain and distress of the mentally and emotionally tormented by turning them into vegetables. So not really curing it at all. Freeman was an absolute crook of a doctor, though he wasn't seen as one at the time. He developed what was known as the prefrontal lobotomy, a procedure that involved removing a section of the brain. Early versions involved drilling into the brain, but the new version involved an ice pick through the eye. He would sometimes even use the one he found in his kitchen. Delightful. Freeman's procedure left thousands of patients incapacitated, including one very famous Rosemary Kennedy, the sister of the future president. More than 15% of his patients died, one during a live broadcast. Despite this, hospitals willingly let him showcase and perform the procedure, which blows my mind. Freeman was more of a showman than he was a doctor. He drove around in a car he called the Lobotomobile, and then he just performed lobotomies wherever he wanted to. Finally, in 1967, he performed his last surgery on a woman in Berkeley, California. He severed a blood vessel and she died, thus ending his deceptive brain hacking miracle. Number 4, Yasser Awaad. Okay, gets crazy from here. This one happened back in 2003. When Maria Martinez was just 10 years old, she started having headaches so severe she had to isolate herself away from the light. So she went to the doctor, Yasser Awaad, a pediatric neurologist. He sent her to have an EEG, and Awaad came to the conclusion that she was having seizures. Though she had no convulsions, he told her that they were absent seizures, which mostly featured a person kind of mentally checking out, so every time she daydreamed she thought she was having a seizure. Very subtle, but they do exist. He prescribed her a medication called Lamictal, though after several months on the medication, her condition got worse, so he doubled the dose. Skip ahead 4 years, Martinez gets a second opinion after Awaad left his practice. Finds out the whole thing was a lie and that the medication actually causes headaches. She never had seizures. Awaad was doing it so he could get more money. She was one of hundreds of patients that Awaad intentionally misled. Her case was the first to go on trial and shed a massive light on hospital fraud. Number 3, opioids. The opioid crisis remains one of the most devastating pharmaceutical deceptions in history. The Sackler family and their company Purdue Pharma developed a new miracle drug called Oxycontin that swept the nation. addiction. It was a revolutionary new painkiller that could help patients all over the place, and that it did. The Sackler family racked in $35 billion in sales of the drug. But there was a catch, as there always is. Oxycontin contains oxycodone, a relative to heroin, aka the dragon, which made it 2 times more powerful than morphine, but just as addictive. But Purdue launched a campaign to intentionally mislead their audience in 1996 that said that Oxycontin was safe. Their catchphrase? Oxycontin, the drug to start with and to stay with. But of course, the phrase had deadly consequences. Since 1999, 200,000 people have died due to Oxycontin overdoses. Number 2. Jayant Patel. Next up, we have the man known as Dr. Death. Jayant Patel worked in both Australia and the USA and was apparently obsessed with putting people under the knife. He lied about his knowledge and competence and would often perform unnecessary surgeries on people who weren't even his patients. His lies led to the deaths of over 87 people. He was the worst combination of arrogant and stupid. He even performed a colonoscopy backwards. How do you do that? How? Beyond the actual surgeries, he would forge the documents pre and post surgery. It took a strangely long amount of time for him to be caught, even with fellow surgeons calling him out. But finally he was sentenced to 7 years in prison, but was sadly released I hate this, but was sadly released 3.5 years after because he had good behavior. Great. Never mind that he killed so many people. The thing that makes me the most angry about this case is that he wasn't the only one who lied. Both of the hospitals he worked at let him perform with dodgy and thin credentials, which means they share the responsibility for those deaths as well. And last but not least, number 1, trial by trachea. Though lab-grown organs are slowly becoming reality, it appears they remain too good to be true. Unless you're Paolo Macchiarini, who continues to evade criticism surrounding his artificially grown trachea treatment. In 2011, Paolo shocked the world when he performed the world's first synthetic organ transplant. He replaced the patient's trachea with a plastic tube made perfectly for him. The surgeon gained worldwide fame, so much fame that even his hospital dismissed notions that the medical miracle man wasn't up to snuff. A couple investigations discovered that the foundation for the procedure was weak and that risk analysis wasn't carried out thoroughly. Out of 9 patients, 7 of them have passed away, but the questions surrounding Paolo mostly criticizes the things that happened prior to surgery. Were the patients ill enough that they required such drastic intervention, or was Paolo too eager to gain attention? I'm endlessly appreciative of the work doctors and nurses do. They are frickin' heroes. But sadly, where there are heroes, there are always villains. Thanks for joining me today on Top 10. I've been your host, Rachel Fisher. If you like this video, you know what to do. Comment, subscribe, like, you know what to do. Anyways, until next time, take care.